regular but still remote meeting of the Burlington Board of Health to order. Uh, Dr. Saltzman, would you please say the Pledge of Allegiance again this year?
I would be delighted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. This may be our last fully remote meeting because June 15th, the governor's state of emergency will end. This does not mean that the pandemic is completely over, but the Commonwealth is on track to meet the goal of vaccinating 4.1 million people this week. New cases of COVID has dropped around 89, 90% since January 8th. The positive COVID-19 testing rate is 1%. All I can say here before we go on is if you have not been vaccinated, get vaccinated. Thank you so much. I'm Ed Weiner, and I'm chairman. And with me remotely are board members, David McSweeney, vice chair, Dr. Wayne Saltzman. Mary Beth Welch will not be here this evening. Is Ms. Andrea Sheehan on?
I am, Ed. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Andrea Sheehan, a board member, is with us this evening. Also, we have Susan Luminello, who is the Director of Public Health, Christine Mathis, our environmental engineer, Sarah Kortemash, our lead administrative assistant and IT host, and Dawn Cathcart, our recording secretary. Thank you to all the outstanding BCAT professionals who work so hard to make this program and many other news programs within Burlington possible. We are still, and the last time, operating in a declared state of emergency with special rules for public meetings. And as he has done throughout the whole pandemic, Mr. McSweeney, our Board of Health Vice Chair, will provide the requirements for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Burlington Board of Health is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in this order. Reminder that persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by tuning into BCAT Government Cable Access Channel, the BCAT Government Meeting Facebook live feed, or over the phone at 408-418-9388, meeting number 173-479-1613. Also, we will be monitoring the comments on Facebook Live to see if there are any that the board may wish to address real time. And as a reminder to the board that all votes are required to be done by roll call. And I am glad that that's the last time I'll have to read that. And with that, back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McSweeney. Thank you for doing this for 15 months or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. Anyway, please note that we are live on BCAT and available for comments and questions through this video technology. And for the last time, I need to say this: remote meetings and chairing remote meetings are not easy. Preparation is many times that of an in-person meeting. We are doing the best we can. We're all in this together, please understand. We have no approval of minutes this evening. Citizens' time. Is there anybody who is watching or on a telephone who'd like to address this board who is not on the agenda? Ms. Kortemash, do you see anybody?
I don't see anybody currently, but if you would like to speak, please unmute yourself.
I guess not. Chairman's report. Well, welcome back to our Director of Public Health, who took a well-deserved week of vacation, and she only did a little work. So I guess that's a step in the right direction. But lots is going on in this community. Business and programs are quickly opening. The town is moving towards becoming a hub of biotech. Our next meeting should be face-to-face. We may even have a semi-normal summer, and I may even take a prospecting vacation, as I usually do in the Southwest, to look for some gold. What else could anyone want after last year and a half? And with that, we'll move on. We've got a heck of a long agenda tonight. So let's go to applications. And I'm going to ask Susan and our environmental engineer, Christine. There was some technical issues around how we need to present, take these in order. Is it the application for a special permit, 25 Network Drive from the Nordblum Company, and an application for a minor engineering change? Are they taken together, Susan? Apart? How should we do this? I know you spoke to the town clerk.
Yeah, you can discuss them together, but vote separately. So they should be two separate motions, one on the special permit and then one on the minor engineering change.
Okay. So
They
I'm going
they
to,
are separate addresses too. So the special permit application is just for the 25 Network Drive.
correct. And
Yeah.
the application for minor engineering change is 15, 25, 45, and 95 Network Drive, again, the Nordblum Company. So, Susan, are you going to present this, or Christine Mathis, our environmental engineer?
Christine will.
Christine, please. Christine, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I see you now, and I hear you.
Okay, my unmute was not functioning, which would be unfortunate tonight. So yeah, to expand upon what you were already saying, Nordblum Company has applied for a special permit for a office building with laboratory, light manufacturing, R&D spaces for 25 Network Drive. That site plan and a special permit were previously approved in 2014, but only for an office building, not the additional uses. And then due to required site enhancements in terms of parking and walkways and landscaping, the minor engineering change will not only affect 25 Network Drive, but will have an effect on the neighboring properties at 15, 35, 45, and 95. Mostly, like I said, walkways, drive aisles, and parking. With that, I'll let Mr. Buckley give the overview of the application, and I think Mr. Fremont Smith is going to give also provide an overview of the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Buckley.
Thank you, Christine. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, Robert Buckley, Raymond Bronstein. Christine is correct. This is a previously approved site for an office building. We're before the planning board and now the Board of Health for a special permit to construct a similar sized building that will be a combination of office, lab, and production with respect to life sciences. The minor engineering changes are required because the adjoining properties, which are also controlled by Nordblum, require some minor modifications to enhance pedestrian and vehicular circulation and to integrate this site better into the overall project. The just for go through in a moment, but for the board's reference, this is a 25 Network Drive, which is up on the former Sun campus, and is one of the last buildings that was permitted and is available. It's been marketed as an office building for the last few years. but given what Burlington has accomplished in the last couple of years with respect to positioning itself for life science industries, there's been quite a bit of activity and interest in locating in Burlington. So Nordblum has spent the last 6 or 8 months in intensive meetings with the engineers, the architects, the specialists designing this facility, which frankly, I think, and I hope that the board is impressed because a lot of time and effort has gone into this. So with that, I will turn it over to Todd, who can take the board through a presentation that will hopefully enlighten the board as to what we're proposing.
Thanks, Bob. If you can hear me, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Todd Fremont Smith with Nordblom. If I can work this, I will attempt to show you what we're talking about. Hold on. Looks like it's working. So can you, oh, that's not the one I wanted to start with. Can you all see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So very briefly, I heard the comment about a long night, so we'll go briefly through this. Remember, from 10,000 feet, when we find a tenant or tenants for this the proposed building, we're going to be back to this board with specific requests for permits, and there'll be a much more in-depth conversation about who's going to actually go into this building and what they're going to do inside the building. But as Bob said, we have this relates to the last unbuilt site at Network Drive. We have been working for some time to pivot this site in a life science direction. As the board knows, the office market is a bit squishy post-COVID, but the life science market is roaring ahead. And Cambridge, looking for, as they grow, they're looking for larger facilities, which just simply can't be accommodated in Cambridge. You know, Waltham, for the most part, is full. Watertown is full. So the wave is coming our way. We're beginning to see it. And we've started working with our capital partner, who is Starwood, and to assemble a team. And the team is led by Richmond Group. Richmond is a well-known boutique design build contractor that's started in East Cambridge and then has spread throughout the market. They're really one of the premier design build firms that does life science around Boston. AHA is our consulting engineer, mechanical engineer. Reamer and Bronstein is handling local permits. SGA is Spagnola Geisness is the architect. MDLA is the landscape architect, and of course, not the last, Frank DiPietro and his group on the civil. So again, as Bob said, Network Drive is the former Sun Microsystems campus, which we acquired, I think, in the summer of 2007, if I remember, from Sun Microsystems. We've been working hard over the past 20 years to convert it to a multi-tenant business park, which has been successful. And we're now, I think the campus is rapidly moving in a life science direction as well, just based on market demand. We've already got a bunch of medical and life science tenants in our as partners. We've got Abbott Labs, LeMaitre, Sarepta, and others. Obviously, on this slide, anchored by Millipore, Merck Millipore down at the bottom. But we continue to see. We did a deal at 60 Blanchard recently with a clean room company, which the board knows well, which is called Azure. So the tenants are coming. As Bob mentioned, we've had this build to suit, which is number 25 for 10 years, trying to find an office tenant. So after a while, we even B students like Bob and I say, wait a minute, it's not working for an office site. Let's go chase the life science market, which we've begun to do, and we're getting some good traction there. Not to dwell on this, I know the board knows the campus, but it's a fully integrated 950,000 square foot campus that is a very nice place to work. We're hoping that when people do come back to work, they'll remember this is a nice place to be. And it's got great interior spaces, exterior spaces, places to relax. And it really is, we lead the market, the Burlington market, in office rents. And it's in large part because of the amenities that you can do on a 950,000 square foot campus that you can't do in a smaller building. And of course, 3rd Avenue, which is a short walk away, is also helping us drive tenants to this campus. So 25 Network Drive, you can see how Sun Microsystems back in the early days, they actually built some of the parking. They blasted the rock. They prepped the site, but then they stopped. They didn't actually build a building. So we had, as was discussed, a 270, up to 270,000 square foot office building that was permitted in 2014. Adjacent garage. We'd like to pivot that site plan, keeping much of the geometry of the site plan. You'll see around the site, there's circulating parking. You'll see this main driveway that runs left to right across the top of the plan. And as we get to the next, this is the more current image, which of course I've just flipped upside down. You see north is now at the top of the screen, and south is at the bottom of the screen, but much of the same parking geometry around the site. It's really just the building footprint which has changed. So what you're looking at, the north end, the top of this plan, the grade falls off. So that's a lower level down where we think that's more the biomanufacturing or GMP as it's called level with larger trucks that would occasionally come. There's not a lot of trucking in a facility like this. You'll occasionally see one large truck and then some smaller box trucks. I don't mean to imply there's a lot of heavy traffic. In fact, there's much less traffic from a lab building than there is from an office building because each scientist who has an office also has a lab. So you see basically parking ratios that are more like 2.0, 2.5 as opposed to 3.0 or 3.5. So there's generally less traffic from these buildings. You'll see at the top of the plan areas for backup generators, for gas storage, for electric switchgear. A building like this does require elevated electrical loads. And we can get into that more in a minute, just because of the increased HVAC requirements for things like 100% outside air and other requirements that just draw more power than a typical building. As I said, the north of the plan now is to the left. So you can see how the grade is lower on the north than on the south. And we're building this building into the grade such that when you come to the front door of the building, you'll actually be entering on a mechanical mezzanine level, which we will finish out like an office level. But that level can be expanded or contracted based on what the GMP user needs down below. Very often, the GMP user, which stands for Good Manufacturing Practices, it relates to the production of compounds which go into the human body, and Dr. Weiner can tell us more about this, or we have actually Richmond groups on the phone too. They can tell more of what goes on in here. But what you're thinking, what we're seeing in the market are companies that are coming out of Cambridge or elsewhere that are going from, let's say, 20,000 square feet, and they're FDA approved, and they've got their second or third, usually third round of funding, and they're looking to build 100,000 square foot facility where they can do HQ, office, laboratory, and production under one roof. And it's called a hybrid building, and it's a new thing in the market. And when the biomanufacturing gets up to 200,000 or 400,000 feet, it tends to go out to places like Fort Devens or down to North Carolina. But at this level of tenant, 100,000, 140,000, they do want to be all under one roof, all their employees under one roof, and that's how we're designing the building. So here's a rendering as you come up the ring road from the Starbucks entrance, close to Starbucks. You'll see the beginnings of this building. It's very much a science building, but it needs to present well. It needs to have branding. A lot of times these scientific buildings will be hosting investors that are coming from around the world to see the facility and to see what they're investing in. So Spagnol Geisnes has designed very much a technical building, which we like. And this is the mezzanine level. As I said, this is the upper level where most of the employees would be coming into work. As they get closer, we're working with MDLA, the landscape architecture firm, to really make this a nice science campus and to really have a nice pedestrian feel to it. If it would be helpful to the chair, we could have Richmond Group talk a little bit about what is a hybrid lab building and what does it mean when we talk about 50-50 lab office and what goes on in a GMP facility. I don't know.
God, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Great. We have Rob Barboza with us, who's Executive Vice President from the Richmond Group. I believe Amy Foley, who's a senior planner, may also be on, but I didn't see her name. But Rob, are you willing and able to talk about some of the systems that go into these buildings? If you're there. I'm highly empathetic to the technical challenges of these online meetings, so.
So are we. Well, let's move on.
Move on. I mean, again, when we have a tenant, and by the way, we think we have a tenant for half this building. We hope to come back soon. You're going to be dealing with, an FDA approved, probably publicly traded company that is ready to make the step to a major HQ office building. And you're going to just see systems such are on the screen. Instead of an office building that has 20% outside air, you're going to have 100% outside air. You're going to have much higher electrical loads, backup generation. But again, when we get to the point where we have an actual tenant that's seeking a special permit to operate within Burlington, we'll come back to you.
Thank you.
And
This-
I am here, sorry, I just want to, Amy Foley, if you do have
Oh.
questions with the Richmond group, and I can speak, so.
I
But
know,
I think
Amy,
it's a good summary.
I was a poli-sci major, so I hope I don't know if you want to expand on that, but
Yeah, I guess I just, given that there's manufacturing slated to go into this building, the biggest take home is that means that it has some robust infrastructure, maybe beyond, your typical lab and a typical office building. So that's what I think this spec sheet is just trying to show, that there's a little bit more infrastructure to support that activity.
yeah. I mean, it's a from a taxable real estate vantage, it's a much more expensive building. There's a lot more money invested. The rents are much higher, so it's what it is.
Yep.
Thank you, Amy. So 25 Network Drive is before you tonight. As Frank can describe, if the board's interested, we are extending some of the driveways down to 35 Network Drive and up to 95 Network Drive to provide a better boulevard, a better entrance for those two buildings as we get them back from some of our office tenants that are downsizing a little bit. We want to be repositioning these buildings to capture the next life science tenant, frankly, that's in the market. So
What you're describing is the minor engineering change.
correct. So there'll be a major permit for building 25 and then a minor engineering change for 35 and 95, just to allow this driveway to come in and rework some of the parking in front of the buildings.
Okay.
And that's just a site planning issue. We don't have a specific user for those buildings yet, but we'll come to you when we do.
Frank, is there anything that you need to point out?
Well, I was going to, this is Frank DePietro, this is for the record from the BSC group. And since I've spoken to you folks for years, I was going to give you a treat and have my very capable associate and colleague, Marissa Valentino, sort of quickly go through the site plan and the drainage system that I know the board's very interested in. So Marissa, if you're ready, please go.
Sure. So a lot of the building setup and the parking areas are very similar to the previous office plan. The building is multi-level, with the higher side being on the southern side of the plan at around 190 and the northern side at 175. So it does drop off along the western and eastern sides. So as part of the Sun Microsystems permitting, a lot of the drainage improvements were installed. So a majority of the drainage goes to a basin, existing drainage goes to a basin located to the north, and then one located to the south. These buildings were never constructed though. So the building 7 and 8 as part of the Sun Microsystems were never constructed. So we were able to use some of that capacity in those existing systems while upgrading the systems on site. There will be a new subsurface detention system located on the north side of the building that will take the runoff from the roof, as well as catch basins installed throughout the parking lots and water quality units. Majority of the parking lot, as well as the roof, will be discharged to the north to an existing basin located just off this plan, on the bottom of the plan. There is actually a slight decrease in pervious area with this new site plan, so we're adding a lot of landscaping, but we did need to include a detention system just based on changes in the drainage patterns to meet those existing rates. And all new utilities on the site, but we'll be connecting into the existing infrastructure within Network Drive.
I have some questions here. I go way back. This is the former RCA site, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. So, I mean, I was there for RCA. I was there for Sun Microsystems. I still have a Sun Microsystems hard hat. that when I toured the place they gave me, and they said I had to throw it away, but I kept it. And now it's going to be a biotech facility. We're very proud of this, proud of the fact that it looks so nice. But I just want to talk. Do you have your LSP here tonight?
We do. And Margaret Hanley is prepared. Just in closing, we told the planning board that this is a growing sector of the Boston economy. These are high-paying jobs. It's less traffic than office. It's diversified from the normal business cycle, and the rents are much higher, which will support the local tax base. But to answer your question, Dr. Weiner, yes, Margaret Hanley is here with us and can answer any questions related to the underlying environmental conditions of the site.
Because that goes along with the drainage situation here. So we need to be rather comfortable on what's going on here. Did you know that the elderly told me that they used to test Abrams tanks on the RCA site? That's a little bit before me, maybe Mr. McSweeney remembers that, but not me. So, and that is that there is contamination, but I need to know that Frank and his colleague is Marissa Valentino,
Correct.
Yeah.
are working together with the LSP, that we're not going to have a problem, because I have a lot of questions for the LSP, and I know that some of the other members do too.
Okay.
So why don't, if it's okay, Marg, you have spoken to us before. Would you please talk to us about Ms. Hanley, the situation there, and if there are any concerns that we should know about? I know we're going to bring a few to you, but do you concur with Mr. DiPietro and Ms. Valentino on the appropriateness of the drainage systems?
Yes, sure. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, I hear.
Okay, let me see if I can share this successfully here. All right. All right. Can you see my screen?
But nothing.
Yeah, there it
yes.
is.
Okay, good, good. All right. So just to sort of summarize where this development site is located, this is located on the southeast side of the Network Drive campus and the former Sun campus. And it was formerly an undeveloped parcel and primarily an upland parcel that although it was contained within the original RCA property boundary, it was not a developed area. So I think you've seen some of these, so we'll just go on to this next slide here. So basically this part of the Sun Microsystems development was not cleared until 2001. So we have documentation going back to the 30s that indicates that this was a largely heavily forested area. There were some footpaths that went through the area, but it was really not developed and cleared until 2001. It is located within the Town of Burlington Aquifer Protection District, but it is not located within the Zone 2 of any public water supply. Groundwater investigations were performed at the site during the MCP investigations of the RCA facility. So we have a good sense as to what the depth of groundwater is at this site, and generally it's about 15 to 20 feet below the existing ground surface and below the proposed proposed elevation of the building slab. So groundwater flow is basically to the northeast, which is more or less cross gradient from the other developed portions of the Network Drive property. So in terms of the context and what the relationship is to the RCA site, as I indicated, it wasn't developed prior to 2001. This was designated as an area referred to as Area C within the RCA site. And within that area, there was no specific area of concern identified. However, because it was part of the RCA site, there were subsurface investigations, which included groundwater sampling, soil sampling, monitoring wells were installed, some soil gas probes were also advanced. So based on these investigations, Area C, which included the development parcel, was closed with a Class A2 response action outcome statement, and that's a regulatory endpoint under the MCP. It basically meant it's a permanent solution under the MCP, so it's considered closed. So this site has been adequately characterized under the MCP and is not subject to any particular land use restrictions. So the development area, just to point out, there is a portion of the former RCA site that is not closed at this time. It's referred to as the VOC plume area. And that is undergoing monitored natural attenuation. Groundwater is monitored periodically at that site, but it is not located within the development site. It's not even located down gradient of the development site. So this site, the development of this site is not expected to have any impact on that VOC plume area. And I can show you a little schematic that makes it a little clearer than that. So if you can see my cursor, the development site is located right in this quadrant, right over here, where groundwater is basically flowing in the north toward Vine Brook. The VOC plume originated in this area here and is flowing also north, but closer to sort of in a direction of 62 in this area here, in this direction. And there's very little left of the VOC plume there. It's just, they're just looking at the residual amounts in groundwater in this location, and they're probably just a few years away from closing out that VOC plume area.
If I could just add something on the drainage or interject something, the proposed drainage system we're using is a closed system. So we certainly have the standard catch basins, the sumps and hoods, the water quality units, and then that runoff goes into an underground detention system. It's a sealed system. It holds the water, releases it slowly. So there's no groundwater recharge proposed for this site for the drainage.
Good. It's far enough to remove from the area of known contamination at the RCA site, the former RCA site, that it's unlikely to have an impact. But that's good. That's less complication.
How about vapor intrusion?
So the criteria for vapor intrusion generally is you have to have VOCs, volatile substances in the groundwater above a specific standard, and groundwater within 15 feet of the elevation of the slab. And at this location, we have groundwater which is likely greater than 15 feet below the slab, and we have no evidence of VOCs in this area. So, I mean, it is something that you would look at a former MCP site, but the data we have indicates that a vapor barrier is not required, at least under the MCP at this site.
Are you
So
going to put one in?
Yes. So here, let me just finish up a couple points about the MCP first. So because it is located within a former MCP site, we do take a look at some possible continuing obligations under the MCP. And the first is whether or not we need a construction RAM or a construction related release abatement measure plan. But because groundwater is at depth at the site and there's no evidence of contamination in soil at the site, a RAM is not required based on the information that's been published for this site. We also don't believe a vapor barrier is specifically required under the MCP because groundwater is greater than 15 feet deep, and also we don't have any VOCs in groundwater. Because the site is within an MCP site, any soil that may be removed from the site will need to be characterized to ensure that it meets the standards of wherever it may be reused. So we will be looking at whether or not any soil needs to be exported so that before it is removed from the site, we will be able to verify that it's appropriate for reuse at another location. So to get back to your question about a vapor barrier. So notwithstanding the fact that it's not required under the MCP, a vapor barrier will be installed at the site. There is, in addition to the vapor barrier, there will be a minimum of a 6-inch subgrade of granular material. And the combination of these two features, the vapor barrier and the thickness of the subgrade, will permit the building to be fitted for a vapor extraction system if it were to become necessary in the future. It's not necessary now, but the system is designed so that it could be retrofitted if required to be.
Very smart. Thank you, Todd.
Idea.
Todd, you may have a political science background, but you know what the Board of Health requires and likes.
Yep. So, so the plan is to manage the soil. If soil comes off the site, it'll be managed in accordance with the DEP's similar soil policy. It will be tested. The vapor barrier will be installed. There will be awareness training because it is still within the former MCP site to make sure that contractors who are working on the site are aware of conditions or to be mindful of possible conditions that could be encountered. And then obviously we will continue to coordinate with the Lockheed Martin folks and their consultants who are continuing the ongoing assessments of the VOCs at the site.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Do the board members have any first of all, Christine, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't at this point. That was a nice summary by everybody.
Very nice. Our Director of Public Health, do you have any questions or?
Yeah, I just had a question. I think it was for Amy. So a couple of questions. One, is the entire building going to be used by one tenant? That's what I'm assuming here. That's what it seems to be being built for. One tenant in the whole building?
We're actually, I can answer that, Susan. We're actually anticipating 2 tenants.
Two tenants. Okay.
Yeah.
So Amy was talking about the infrastructure in the building and the way it was built out. It's been built out for 2 tenants, I'm guessing. And the elevators, I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the infrastructure for those tenants. Are those elevators dedicated to going to certain laboratories? How is that different, and how is it directed towards being for biological tenant?
Well, from an architectural standpoint, each side of the building, each phase for the 2 tenants will have 1 passenger and 1 freight, at least 1 passenger, maybe 2. So it's anticipated that the people coming in at the mezzanine level from the executive parking lot, for instance, would ride in the passenger elevator, and that would run up from the GMP level up through the mezzanine to the lab level. Closer to the loading docks, there'd be a freight elevator, which would go all the way from the GMP level to the penthouse, the mechanical penthouse on the roof. Now, if Amy's still on, she could speak to, what rides in that freight elevator and how that's managed, because I can't speak to that.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to. So I would say, first of all, just as far as elevators go for a manufacturing tenant like this, it's really not different from a standard office or lab building, because a good building will have a freight elevator. And so like the uses aren't really any different in my mind, other than that it's more frequently used probably. And I know at least for one of the tenants that's being considered, the motion of materials, it's all contained, packaged, like double wrapped type of materials that's moving either on a dolly or in a cart, or being even carried. And they'll likely have a warehouse, at the lower grade level that may be as high as they can to get a good amount of materials in that one area, but it will be then broken down further, and there's usually smaller storage areas that support different manufacturing groups more local to the area of use. And so it's probably going to be something like that. Picture a larger warehouse zone that gets then disseminated down into smaller storage areas that are close to the area of use. And they would probably also have a space for waste storage as well, which would be located, they like to have sort of like an incoming and an outgoing theme in manufacturing. And so that's how they would set up the loading docks. So, bio waste, if it's a red boxed containers, those would all be stored in a secured room that would be located near the loading dock, for example. Any other questions?
And the two areas so the one tenant won't be able to get over into the other tenant's areas, and they'll be all locked and secured and that way.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, they will definitely want to have their own spaces secured, and as manufacturing, you're required to do so.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Members of the board, are there any questions, any comments? Dr. Saltzman?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I have no issues or concerns with regard to the special permits. But I do feel compelled to make a comment, Mr. Chairman. The board has had a wonderful relationship with Nordblum over the past number of years, as it has advocated and supported the safety of our community. But there was a comment made twice for which the board is not motivated. While the board is very pleased that the town is going to prosper from this, the board is not interested in the incomes or the rents or anything else like that. The board is interested in making sure that our community is safe from all endeavors that the board is asked to oversee. So I wish the Nordblum Company well in this endeavor, as the board advocates in partnership with Nordblum to make sure that our community is safe and our community prospers from this.
Thank you, Dr. Saltzman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please, Mr.
Yeah.
McSweeney.
Thank you. And Dr. Saltzman, thank you. That was one of my, that I heard that as well, and I appreciate you addressing that. Just a couple of comments, and first, I loved this. I loved the look of this project and what it's bringing to the town. I think it does look great. And second comment is, you folks did a great job, as Mr. Chairman mentioned before, in presenting the overview, because I really had a list of about 12 questions, and you answered almost every single one of them. I just have, so thank you for that. I just have a small, really follow-up question as regards to the storm water management. So Frank and/or Ms. Valentino, I think though, and I'm not familiar with the current layout in the existing site, but it sounds like you're reusing at least the existing surface runoff, right? And I think I heard you're reducing impervious surface. I thought I heard that there's some retention, above ground retention basins there. Is that correct? Or can you talk to that and talk about, is there increased water flow to those, and how long it's going to be in there, and how deep the water, and all those types of details?
Like some of the members on the board and some of the project team, I've been in Burlington and around when before Sun Microsystems came in. And as part of that development, there was a master plan put together for the overall drainage system for the entire site. And that included on the easterly side, a couple of above ground detention systems. So if you go down by sort of the northerly end, you'll see a couple of them as you drive along Middlesex Turnpike. At this end of the site, there's a relatively steep slope. Some of it has riprap on it, and there's a relatively narrow detention system down at that bottom of the hill right there between Middlesex Turnpike and as you go up the hill toward this site. The system was designed that the proposed drainage that was going down there would essentially have a maximum flow that went into these basins. And so that the system components that went into those basins had to be designed to a certain level. They couldn't exceed the original design, impervious area, those type of things. So the drainage from the top of the hill down to those basins was put in, so we wouldn't have to dig up the slope and get it down there. And so essentially what we've done here is, if you're familiar with, there's a ring road that runs around the entire site. The drainage connections from the interior are based along that ring road, and they go down into the detention basins, whether it's the one near our site, the southerly end, or at the other end northerly end. So what we ended up doing was as if we were doing a private lot. We had a peak flow rate volumes coming from our quote unquote 25 Network Drive lot based upon the original design going back 20 years ago, Sun Microsystems. And so we essentially matched, or actually we reduced the peak flow rates coming from our site into that system and going into the, essentially I'll call it off-site, but really on-site detention off our 25 Network Drive site. And because we don't need the parking that the office, so if we went back to the office, the design for the office that was approved was about up to 270,000 square feet. They had 810 parking spaces, including parking under the building, was a 3.3 parking space per 1,000 square foot ratio. The current design has 440 parking spaces, and it's about a 2.5 space per ratio. So that reduction in parking, part of it, the building is a little bit bigger footprint wise because of the GMP and whatever, but allowed us to essentially add some green space around the site. You can sort of see it next to the building and the trees along there. And we were able to actually reduce the impervious area from what was approved from the office building in 2014 by about 0.3 of an acre. Not a huge amount, but an increase. So we ended up having a reduction in the peak flow coming off the site because we want to meet that flow coming off our site down into the drainage detention basin at the bottom of the hill next to Middlesex Turnpike. We have a detention area underground on our site. It holds the water and releases it at a controlled rate. So that's sort of a overall summary. All of the peak flow rates before and after are less than what the existing conditions was, are less than what the going back 20 something years approved peak flow rates were.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I appreciate the detail around that. And just one other small question, and I don't know if this is for Todd or somebody else, but is there a basement in this building, or is it a slab in what is being housed in the basement?
So no, this is a slab on grade. As we discussed, there'll be two different levels to the building because we're building it into the grade, but no, it's a slab on grade.
It's slab on grade. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. No other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Ms. Sheehan, do you have any questions or comments?
No, this has been quite enlightening for me as the new member to the board. It's very interesting, but I don't have any questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask a couple questions. First, I think that you have seen the 15 conditions. You have, and you agree to all 15 conditions. I'm going to ask either the Director of Public Health or our environmental engineer about condition number 6. The Board of Health requires an LSP opinion analysis based on groundwater data, among other factors, that vapor intrusion protections are not required for the proposed building. However, they are going to place vapor intrusion protections. Do we need to add something to that condition that acknowledges the fact that they have agreed to put in a passive intrusion system?
This is Susan. So we do have a condition to put in wording for a condition for putting in a passive system. So we would replace this condition with that other condition if the board wants to ensure that that system is put in. So instead of modifying this condition, we have particular wording. And Christine, do you have that?
I mean, it's just a technicality because I think that everything I have seen, I'm very positive about. But and since Ms. Henley has mentioned that they have agreed to do that, I would just like to see that in writing.
That's fine.
I see Ms. Hungus here. She's representing the proponent, correct?
Yes,
Correct.
I am.
Yeah, Mr. Buckley
Bob
went
had a
home.
conflict, so Bob had a conflict, so I'm sitting in. Yeah, that would be fine, since we're already putting in the vapor barrier. But we can, if you send along that condition, Susan or Christine, I'll take a look at that and then, but it should be fine.
So they're voting on it tonight. So Christine, do you have the wording for that condition? So we can take the vote tonight for that?
I don't think that I do have it.
Okay,
Um,
so,
it-
well, maybe we can just modify it now and just say they will install a passive vapor barrier system, change number 6.
Margaret, is that the right language?
We,
I think
I agree.
the,
We could, yeah.
yeah, it constitutes a passive system. It's a pervious subgrade with a vapor barrier. It's not active, so yes.
So what would it read, Susan, please?
so I'm suggesting to replace condition number 6 with the prior to, well, the applicant will install a passive vapor barrier system.
Period.
Yeah.
Would that suffice, Ms. Hung?
Yeah, Margaret, is that language okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
Yes.
Mr. Fremont Smith, is that okay?
It is.
I just want to make, since you asked, and since, 100 years from now, I may not be on the Board of Health. They have to go back and to the electronic records when you come back for a engineering change 100 years from now, that it's there. So I appreciate it.
Sure.
With that, if there are no other comments, we will take first. Well, first the other issue is we have both a special permit and a minor engineering change, and both. I'll check with Christine. Both of the comments are identical. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you would change that on number 6 of both of them. Would that be
That's
okay? Since they're identical sets of conditions?
correct.
Okay. Do we have that, Ms. Cathcart? That number 6 is changed on both of those conditions?
Yes, we do.
Beautiful. So we'll first take the application for a special permit, 25 Network Drive. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the application for special permit for 25 Network Drive.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. McSweeney. Are there any more discussion? If not, all in favor, Mr. McSweeney,
Aye.
Dr. Saltzman,
Aye.
Ms. Sheehan,
Aye.
and I vote aye, 4-0-0. Now, we next have an application for minor engineering change, 15, 25, 35, 45, and 95 Network Drive. Again, the Nordblum Company. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the application for minor engineering change for 15, 25, 35, 45, and 95 Network Drive.
Sounds like a football call. Do I have a second, please?
Second. Okay. Ms. Sheehan.
Second by Ms. Sheehan. So I have a motion and I have a second. Is there any other discussion? If not, I'll put that to a vote. Mr. McSweeney,
Aye.
Dr. Saltzman,
Aye.
Ms. Sheehan,
Aye.
and I vote aye, 4-0-0. That's it. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Of course, the moment we know who the tenant is, we'll come right back in and talk to you about the specifics of what that tenant wants to do. So we'll be
Very
back.
good. We wish you well.
Yeah, nice job, folks. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
son.
you.
Yes.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you very
Take
much.
care.
Ms. Valentino, Frank, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Next order is application for a special permit, 1 North Avenue, Desktop Metal Incorporated. Who is going to be presenting this?
I will, Mr. Chairman. This is Christine.
Thank you very much. And who do we have from Desktop Metal here, please?
Looks like we have Holly Lynch and Kevin Lee. Anybody else? Holly?
No, that's it. It's just Kevin and myself this evening.
Okay, I'll do a quick overview and then hand it over to you guys. So as the board knows, Desktop Metal currently operates at 63 3rd Ave, making and using 3D metal printers. The board has seen them twice in the past for their initial site plan and special permit, and then another special permit to expand their operations to include larger 3D metal printers. They are looking to move into 1 North Ave, which is a couple buildings away, and they will be using wood flour or sawdust, if you will, to make 3D wood products. They will be using 2 suites at the 1 North Ave location. That location does have other tenants, but they are separated from the other tenants by 8-inch thick concrete firewalls. And they did a fire in building code review that I'll let them talk a little bit more about. And Holly and Kevin can give you an overview of the process and safety measures that will be in place.
Ms. Lynch or Mr. Lee? Anything you'd like to add or?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. Thank you for meeting with us tonight and taking time to hear our application.
Ms. Lynch, can I interrupt you for 1 second? We have
You may.
we have spent a lot of time with Desktop Metal, and we have learned so much as we told you a couple of years ago or more now, that you were the first, and it's a very interesting process, a complicated process. We have some new members. Could you just quickly, in a couple of sentences or paragraphs, just explain what Desktop Metal does?
So the wonderful founders of our company figured out how to 3-dimensionally print metal in a manner that can fit in an office environment at first, and that's where the term desktop came from. And so they took metal, they turned it into a powder, they bound it up like a crayon, and with a 3D printer, they melted the crayon into the shape of the parts that they wanted. After removing the binder and sintering the metal, you would have a piece of stainless steel, either in the shape of a tool you wanted or in a complex configuration for parts that traditionally would have been created in metal injection molding. And you could do it in your office. You could invent something in your office using a 3D drawing program like SolidWorks, and then take your little drawing that you made and bring it over and slice it and put it into your printer, and within 24 to 36 hours have that object printed, and then within another 24 to 36 hours have that object in the palm of your hand and be able to use it. And it's revolutionary. We expect it to revolutionize invention. We expect the way people make things and the way people invent things, instead of having to bring their prototypes to metal injection molding and waiting 6 weeks for a mold to be made and then the metals to be bought and melted into it, to have the turnaround time much quicker. After they perfected or got comfortable with the shops, with the studio system, our amazing scientists decided to try to do this on a production level. And in the last couple of years, the machines that now will take this part that was invented, and they will be able to print it or mass print it in a larger machine at quicker times. And then instead of just having one part made and ready to be used in 5 days. Now you can have 150 parts made or 200 parts made or even more depending on the size of the parts. And the science behind that is a little bit different. They do that in single pass jetting, where they put a layer of powder down and then pour the binder or the ink in the shape of the part onto the powder bed, layer by layer. But at the end, you still end up with a 3D printed product that they stick inside of a sintering furnace. And when they pull it out, it has the tensile strengths and the ability to do what the designer wanted it to do in so much quicker amount of time.
Ms. Lynch, what is your background?
My background is that I'm an environmental health and safety generalist. I have worked for Illinois Toolworks for 10 years of my career. I worked for Dr. John Warner at the Institute of Green Chemistry in Wilmington for 2 years. I worked for A123 Systems, which was also a Rick Fulop system company for 2 years. And then I came when he asked if I would help him again and help the company again to Desktop Metal, where I have been for 4 years.
That was an outstanding presentation. I just want everyone to know. Thank you. And
You're welcome.
Mr. Lee, what is your background? What do you?
Hi, my background is a mechanical engineer.
Thank
but
you
I
very much.
turned facilities and operations.
Thank you very much. Have you seen the 6 conditions?
Yes, we have.
Okay. And you have no problem with those?
No, we have no problem with those. We
Okay.
expected them.
I'll open it up to questions. Our environmental engineer, Christine Mathis, do you have any questions other than what you've presented?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to point out one thing that I didn't mention earlier, that the air filtration system on the units at 1 North Ave that will house Desktop Metals will be independent of other tenants. So they're specifically for the units where Desktop Metals will be located. And they'll be very similar to what it has been in use and remains in use at 63 3rd Ave in terms of the local dust collectors with the air scrubbers with the HEPA filters and positive pressure rooms to ensure dust collection efficiency.
Thank you. That's
Um,
interesting. I just want to reiterate here, the hazard analysis concluded that engineering safeguards and housekeeping procedures for the wood flour 3D printing process will not result in an elevated fire or explosion hazard. We've seen that before with you, so thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, I'll ask from,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the application for a special permit, 1 North Ave Desktop Metals, Inc.
do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Dr. Saltzman. Is there any other discussion? Just that you've done a beautiful job over the past 4 years. Thank you so much. I hope you like it here in Burlington. I really do. Very impressive. I'll put that to a vote. All in favor? Mr. McSweeney?
Aye.
Dr. Saltzman?
Aye.
Ms. Sheehan?
Aye.
And I vote aye, 4-0. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. Ms. Lynch, you're very outstanding discussion. I really appreciate that. 4-0-0.
Thank
so
you
much.
very much. Thank you very much.
And
We
Mr. Lee,
appreciate
thank you very much.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Application for special permit and site plan, 59, 61, and 63, Middlesex Turnpike, Noria Energy Corporation. Well, who'll be presenting this? Christine, will you be presenting this?
Yep, that would be me again, having a problem again with my mute button.
It's okay.
So again, I'll give a brief introduction and then I think Mr. Poyer is here for the applicant, and he can introduce the rest of the team. So currently the site has a Shell brand gasoline station on it and a convenience store. They are looking to raise the existing convenience store and build a new convenience store where they will also be raising a shuttered D'Angelo's restaurant. The new convenience store would go where approximately where the old D'Angelo's building is, and the gasoline station function would remain in roughly the same area. They will be removing the current fuel storage tanks and replacing them with new underground storage tanks, new pumps and dispensing systems at the site. They will be improving some of the stormwater at the site. I think somebody from Bowler is here and they can speak to that. And then just to point out also that this site has had a number of release tracking numbers assigned to it over the years, dating back, I believe, to late 1990s. They're associated with fuel releases and have been have reached a permanent solution with no conditions. Mr. Poirier, do you want to?
Mr. Poirier, what is your role, please? Are you the owner or?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, staff, thank you, Christine. I'm Bill Poirier from Reamer and Braunstein, representing.
Oh, Bill, I couldn't see you. I'm so sorry.
Dr. Weiner. Don't you worry about that. Well, I'm going to leave because Christine just did my job for me, so I'm going to head out. No, I'm teasing. As Christine said very ably and thoroughly, it's a full rebuild, redevelopment project that we're proposing. We're recreating the same uses that have been there for many years, the retail, fuel, and convenience store, as well as the fast food order shop in the D'Angelo's, where, excuse me, combining the convenience store use and the sandwich shop use into a single building, again, as Christine mentioned. And again, it's a full rebuild, so state-of-the-art fuel dispensers, new USTs, stormwater treatment, and some infiltration, which we can get in more detail in a few minutes, and landscaping and utilities as well. So it's probably a kind of a project the board is very familiar with, and I'm going to hand it off to the board for specific questions or direction to us about which topics you'd like to hear in more detail at this point. Thank you.
Christine, do you have any other comments or any other before we move on to the board? I hear.
Yes, I do. I see that Mr. Trainer from Geo Insights is on the call, and he's the LSP representing the site, and maybe he could give us just a little more background on environmental history at the site. That would be appreciated.
That would be good. He's the person I need to speak with. Thank you, please.
Sure. Well, thank you, Christine, and thank you to the board. Just a quick overview. I think Christine touched on the basic environmental history. There have been historic release conditions at the property. They've all been closed out with what's now termed a permanent solution. Some of these conditions were more on the order of surface spills around the pump islands. There were two surface spills of 10 gallons of gasoline or so associated with overfills. One of the releases was from a pole-mounted transformer that spilled some mineral oil, non-PCB containing mineral oil, dielectric fluid. And then there were some historic gasoline impacts or petroleum impacts that were identified around the dispensers and oil water separator that were subsequently cleaned up and closed out with permanent solutions. There was one back in the early 2000s, detection of some low concentrations of chlorinated solvents, trichloroethylene and tetrachloroethylene, in a couple of the monitoring wells that were close to the road. And these or those compounds were identified as coming in from an upgradient offsite source. And so a downgrading property status was filed. Now, to put that into context, this area is in a drinking water area, and so the reportable concentrations for those compounds were pretty low. But those concentrations that were detected, this is back in 2002, 2003 timeframe, those concentrations are below the GW2 standards that Mass DEP promulgated that are associated with potential vapor intrusion. So although these, the detection of these two chlorinated solvents was reported, as it should be because there was in a drinking water area, these were not above conditions that would indicate potential vapor intrusion.
Ms. Luminello, our Director of Public Health, do you have any input? Anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'm just wondering if we should be consistent with what we've done in the past with regards to a vapor barrier on this site as we have on other sites.
I'm going to agree with that, but we can talk about that. I agree with that. Any other board members want to?
Couple of questions, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Yeah, so it'd be great to. It looks like there's, and I'm just going by the map that's on, the site plan that's on here, but it looks like there's change in grade, substantial change in grade, and maybe I'm wrong, so I don't know if somebody can talk about that, and then about the proposed stormwater management system, and I did have that same question about vapor barriers, well, and also disposal of the old tanks. Do we know how old those tanks are? And I asked you 4 questions in a row, so you can answer them in any order. Thanks.
The tanks are a little under 20 years old, I believe. So they were installed after the 1992 underground storage tank regulations. So they would be double walled with leak detection in between the walls.
Great. Thanks, Christine. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
So the question about the change in grade and the stormwater management.
Sure, and if I may, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, Luke DiStefano with Bowler Engineering. The grade across the majority of the site is rather gentle, behind the limits of development. However, there's a fairly steep grade that drops back into the brook. But the grade across the site is, as I mentioned, fairly flat. And as far as the stormwater management system goes, if you've had an opportunity to review the drainage plan, you'll see that it's a fairly comprehensive stormwater management design that's basically designed to promote additional infiltration and enhance stormwater pretreatment. And we're doing that through a series of methods, the first being the collection and infiltration of the quote clean runoff from the building roof, as well as the canopy roof, into the existing stormwater management system located, or I'm sorry, infiltration system on the north side of the property. The rest of the site will be collected via a series of deep sump catch basins fit with oil water hoods that will convey runoff into a proprietary stormwater quality unit prior to discharge back into the brook where it ultimately ends up under existing conditions. But under post-development conditions, you'll see a significant improvement not only to the quantity of the stormwater runoff exiting the site, but the quality of the stormwater exiting the site due to the pretreatment and BMPs utilized as part of the stormwater management system.
Great, thank you. Just one follow-up question. I know the grade is pretty level or gentle slope with a property development is. I'm noticing the steep slope in the back of the property going to Vine Brook. Is that existing grade or are we changing that grade?
No, that's existing. We're not touching any of that slope in the back of the property. As a matter of fact, as part of the development, we'll be moving everything slightly further away from the brook.
Great, thank you. And I did have that same question about the vapor barrier, but Mr. Chairman, I'll leave that with you.
Anybody else on the board? I have a number of questions. Do you really want to infiltrate with a down gradient status? The LSP, Mr. Trainer, and the engineer, have you got together, Mr. DiStefano, is that correct?
Correct.
Are you together on this with additional infiltration with a down gradient status and the possibility of something there? I don't know. Have you talked about that?
We have talked about it. I think functionally there isn't going to be any substantive change from the infiltration that's occurring out there now. The DPS, the concentrations that were detected were pretty low at the time, and with the substantial effects that are going to be basically consistent with current, I'm not expecting that there'll be any real effects associated with what was detected for the DPS.
The question that we've had before us, and I'll open this to my board too, is whenever we have any area that's contaminated, that we ask for a vapor barrier, some plastic. And there are people who are going to be working in that convenience store for many hours. It's a convenience store. Hopefully you're successful and you'll be there for many years. That it's a very inexpensive way to protect or be ultimately careful. And I concur with our Director of Public Health that even though it's not necessary, that I think we're going to ask for some sheeting, a vapor barrier there. Whom do we speak to and whom do we what does council feel? Mr. Proya? Bill?
Yes, here, I'm here. Thank you. Yeah, we have discussed this as a team, and I think Kevin can probably speak directly toward the design of that, along with Luke. And we do have Mike Durant and Tom's here too, Tom Healy from Noria Energy, and we have discussed that as a team. So I think I want to open it up to Kevin again and speak to more of the details about that, what we've discussed. I think we should do that at this point.
Yeah, I think we had talked about putting in, even though it wouldn't be required under the MCP, is to put in an upgraded barrier associated with just upgraded from what a standard construction type project would be, to be a thicker vapor barrier that would have overlapped or taped seams as a prudent precautionary measure.
I mean, that would be, we would prefer that, and that would be under proposed condition number 3.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we could change that like we did with the first application that you heard for Nordblum, and change it to the applicant will install a passive vapor barrier system.
Okay, would that be all right, Mr. Trainer? Are you nodding?
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, I just got on mute. My kids were going to bed, and so they were coming over to.
Oh, we'll
say good
hurry
night,
up
so.
then. Would that be all right?
Yes, that.
And then I
that
want to
language
make
is
sure
fine for
that
me.
that the professionals here agree to that. Is that all right, Mr. DiStefano? You're on mute.
I'll certainly defer to the environmental professionals relative to that, as well as
Okay.
Nuri.
Okay, Since that's been changed, I'm going to look for if there's any other discussion. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second, Dr. Salzman. Now we're voting on the 7 proposed conditions for approval. And number 3 has a minor change on it. So I can, if there's any other discussion, Mr. Proia.
Excuse me, Chairman Warner. Did you say 7 conditions? I thought we had
I see 7.
15.
I
There's
have a,
16, there's 16 conditions.
oh, then I'm sorry. There are 16 conditions. Thank you very much. The page is stuck together.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm
So-
sorry they
No,
stuck
I just-
together.
So,
just
so
wanna
Mr.
make
Chairman,
sure.
yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, just so we're clear, right? So this is, I make a motion to approve the application for a special permit and site plan, 596163 Middlesex Turnpike, Noria Energy Corporation, with the 16 attached conditions. And Christine, just to make clear, the vapor barrier is part of the 16?
We will change number 3 to read that the applicant will install a passive vapor barrier system.
So
Thank you.
with the 16 attached conditions with the modification of number 3.
Thank
That's
you
my
for
motion.
keeping me
Okay.
honest.
And I still second it.
And so seconded. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll put it to a vote. Mr. McSweeney? All in favor, Mr. McSweeney?
Aye.
Okay. Dr. Salzman?
Aye.
Ms. Sheehan?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That's 4-0. We wish you well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Good
Thank
evening.
you all.
Folks.
Thank you all. All right. Permits, biological safety permit, 60 Blanchard Road, Translate Bio Incorporated. Who is going to present this, or?
Good evening.
I'll give a quick introduction,
Sure.
Dr. Chairman, and then I'll turn it over to the Translate Bio team. I just want to remind the board that you're familiar with Translate Bio in that AMRI, located at 99 South Bedford Street, came to you a couple months ago for a biological safety permit to manufacture a COVID vaccine using Translate Bio's intellectual property. And Translate Bio is now looking to come to a second location, if you will, in Burlington, and they're seeking to lease one of the, or a couple of the clean rooms at Azure, the Azure facility, which will be located at 60 Blanchard Road. You're familiar with Azure. They came to the board. We had a subcommittee meeting on them at the end of last year, and then they came to the board twice to review their special permit application. One of their conditions for approval of their special permit was that each individual tenant, prospective tenant, going in at 60 Blanchard Road had to review the Board of Health's biological safety regulations for applicability to their operations. And in this case, Translate Bio has done so and is applying to the board for such a biological safety permit. So with that, I can turn it over to Translate Bio.
Yes, and how do you pronounce your last name, Ms.? Is it Ms. or Doctor? H-E?
He. with
Key,
he.
Key, thank you very much.
No, thanks for asking. Good
And what do you do for Translate Bio?
I'm the safety manager with Translate Bio. I'm relatively new with the company. I joined on March 1st. So tonight I have my team with me. So I will start with the introduction. Then I will pass along to Bob Spielvogel. He's our safety consultant. He's been with the company for more than a decade. So after that, Azor, Kim, Paul, Pardino, and Christine Krisher. They will share their program. Finally, Bob Fortier from Translate Bio, he's our project manager. He will take you through more details. Before I start, I want to thank you, Chairman, and Board of Members for the time and the opportunity for us to present the biological safety permit. Especially, I want to thank Christine Mathis for her, time and walking us through the whole application, attending our IBC, addressing all our questions and increase. For that, I want to thank you, Christine.
Ms. Heath, we thank you and your team and Translate Bio for coming to Burlington. So thank you.
Thank you. We're grateful for that. So, all right, can you go next, Bob? All right, so we are in Translate. We're the leading messenger RNA company. And as Christine just mentioned, the messenger RNA platform has a great potential not only as a therapeutics for the genetic diseases or rare disease such as cystic fibrosis, you also shown even greater potential, which we all witness and benefit as a technology to prevent diseases such as COVID-19 when it's used as a vaccination, as a vaccine. So we are located in 29 Hartwell in Lexington right now. We will be moving into Waltham, 200 West Street by the end of the year. So right now we have about 170 employees. We're fast growing, projecting to have about 210 employees by the end of 2021. And I heard last year, the same time, we only had about 70 employees. All right, next, please. All right, we have a culture of acting as one. When that applies to safety, right, that means we engage leadership and scientists at different levels. Bob Fortier, he's going to take you through the project. He's our project manager, also senior director for the technical operation, tech ops, sorry about that. Greg Triano, he's our chief manufacturing officer. Unfortunately, he cannot be here tonight because his son is having a surgery. We have a facility team support the day-to-day lab operation. I'm a part of that team. We also have an expert from all the EHS function areas. So I have my PhD in bioengineering from National University of Singapore. I'm a registered biosafety professional. My colleague, again, he's not here tonight, Dr. Sashwata Kamarkar. He's a PhD in organical chemistry and he's our chemical hygiene officer. Bob Spielvogel, he's gonna talk soon. He has all the credentials every EHS professional wish to have. So with that, can we go next, please? So we established the Institutional Biosafety Committee per the requirement in biological safety regulation from Burlington and also in NIH guidelines. So we have the member from community, and we're grateful for Jim to volunteer his time to represent the general public and local community. Again, to Christine for represent the Burlington Board of the Health. Other member, myself and Bob Spielvogel and Bob Fortier, we're all here tonight. So we have the IBC meeting on April 21st. We had a thorough discussion of the project, which is gonna be operated at Azure. We submitted, after the meeting, we submitted the IBC charter, IBC meeting minutes, and also the IBC roster as a part of the application package to Burlington Board of the Health. So we plan to keep the meeting, the committee, running up to date. We're gonna hold at least the meeting on the annual basis or whenever there's a major modification or changes arise. Next, please. In addition, besides IBC, I also lead the site safety committee. So we have scientific representatives from individual departments, not only for on-site, also for off-site, such as AMRI and AZOR, so that we can have a platform. We meet on quarterly basis to engage the scientists. They have an array of expertise and they are our ambassadors in the lab to share our safety topics and operation updates, etc. So we have a good established oversight structure for safety. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bob Spielvogel. All right, Bob. Are you on mute, Bob?
About now, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry about that. One thing I did want to mention is that although the IBC for the Azure facility happened in April, Translate has been holding IBC meetings for since its inception and its predecessor companies as well. So many of the people, including Ron Renaud, who is the CEO of the company, has been involved with biosafety for quite a long time. I did want to mention that the program, the Environmental Health and Safety Program, is well developed and integrated into all aspects of the operation, and with ways hiring, she's really taken it to the next level, being on site and having established the safety committee, as well as reviewing all the existing plans and ensuring that they're both consistent with the operations and covers the environmental health and safety requirements. These are just some of the programs that we have. We do, as I mentioned, have a fully integrated process of evaluation and oversight. We also, I know waste management is a concern in Burlington, and we do have a well-established waste management process. We will establish in the suites that we'll be renting from Azure satellite waste accumulation areas to ensure that the waste that is generated in the process is contained and well managed. I'll show you how it's going to be managed through the facility, but we will ensure that that we are prepared in the event that there, for emergencies, which is also a part of the waste management process at Translate. This is the floor plan. Translate will be occupying these two suites. Paul can correct me, but I believe there are 20 suites in all. These are Translate suites. Any waste that is generated in either of these two suites, as I mentioned, will be maintained in containment in a satellite area within the suite. And once the waste is once the containers are filled, they will be relocated from the satellite area following this process to a main accumulation area, which is basically a staging area for shipment off-site. We also have infection control, not only environmental health and safety, but infection control. We do have a biosafety manual that Way is in the process of reviewing and updating. We have included in that program is a bloodborne path exposure control plan. Hepatitis B vaccinations are are offered to all employees, and we have established a relationship with an occupational health relationship with Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge. They have an occupational health clinic. We also have, we provide to all employees environmental health and safety training, and WAY is in the process of updating that and integrating that into all aspects of the operation. And I'll turn it over to Paul. Paul will talk about Azur's operation at 60 Blanchard. Paul?
All right. Good evening, everybody. Paul Paldino. I'm the operations manager for Azur Clean. Thank you for listening to us tonight. Appreciate that very much. So, Azur, our clean rooms on demand facility, will provide to Translate Bio facility maintenance, cleaning, analytical help, warehousing, and quality service. Translate Bio is going to manage their own production activities within their suite. That's going to include establishment and management of operational processes using good manufacturing practices, GMP, and good documentation practices, GDP. Next slide, please. Excellent. So Azur, so ACOD is short for Azur Clean Rooms on Demand, if you see ACOD here. We're committed to providing a safe and healthy workplace for employees, contractors, visitors, and the community. And we're going to make sure that we follow all forms of environmental compliance. So our structure, we have an EHS policy, as I just read, but it's supported by an EHS manager, and we also have a contracted third-party firm called Safety Partners that helps us make sure we manage that policy and we're following all applicable guidelines and regulations. Some of the programs that we have for EHS, chemical hygiene plan, lab safety, hazard communications, hazardous waste management, personal protective equipment, biosafety, bloodborne pathogens, emergency procedures, and fire safety. Excuse me, next slide, please. So training, before anyone can access any of the clean room areas, they have to go through a certain level of training. So some of those trainings are emergency response, fire safety and evacuation, site security training, and hazard communication. We have plans for hazard communication, chemical hygiene, lab safety, hazardous waste, and bloodborne pathogens and biosafety that are also trained upon and available for folks throughout the facility they can access. In terms of emergencies and waste management, we are contracted at Azur through Veolia Environmental Services. They provide emergency spill response 24/7. We have emergency showers and eye washes within the facility, including in every one of our 20 clean room suites. We have spill kits, and that's all provided outside the clean room area. Veolia also comes in and they will handle our hazardous and non-regulated waste disposal. And we're using Stericycle to handle our biological waste. Okay. We have a main accumulation area and a satellite accumulation area, and they're all inspected weekly. Did you have a question, Mr. Chairman?
No, are you through? Is that the end?
No, we have.
No,
we have a few more.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of facility access and control, we have site security and, of course, access control. So entrances to the facility, entrances to the clean room area, our warehouse space, and other areas across the facility are secured and require badge access. And again, as we touched on in the previous slide, training is required to obtain a badge to get into any of our GMP areas. We have CCTV cameras located throughout the facility, and all contractors, visitors, and guests are required to check in at the main entrance and must be escorted by badge personnel. In terms of biosafety, the Translate Bio program is a BSL-1 program, and that is, again, that is a secured access control through their suite and contained in a biosafety cabinet. And with that, I believe I'll turn it over to Bob Fortier to take the next slide. Thank you.
Bob is our project manager at the Azure facility. Bob?
Thanks. Yep. Thanks, Bob and Paul. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Yeah, as Bob mentioned, I oversee the manufacturing of clinical supplies at Azure. Certainly, it's been mentioned already. Christine mentioned we're already in Burlington at the AMRI site with our platform technology, which is the mRNA encapsulated within that lipid nanoparticle, which I think everyone's familiar with these days. Specifically in Burlington at Azure, we're running our vaccine program. So what we're doing is we're going to manufacture multiple strains of candidates to help against various strains of influenza and respiratory viruses. These are at actually a smaller scale than the AMRI site. They're doing phase 2, phase 3. This is more of a phase 1 safety trials, so the scale's significantly smaller, but same platform, same technology that you've heard about previously from my colleagues. And that's all I had. If you have any questions.
Okay.
Bob, what is your last name?
Fortier.
Fortier. Well, Dr. He, Mr. Spielvogel, Mr. Palladino, and Mr. Fortier, wonderful presentation. Thank you very much for coming. Christine, is there any other comments that you have or anything that you'd like to present, or have you been through all this?
I've been through their full application materials and just wanted to point out, and you can see this in the conditions, that we still need finalized health, safety, and security related plans from both Azure and from Translate Bio prior to operation. So those are in the works.
Okay. Our Director of Public Health, Susan Luminella, do you have any comment or any concerns?
I just had one question for Paul, but I think it was just answered by Christine, and that was on your presentation you had pending, and I was wondering what that was referring to, is that you're still working on the plans?
That is correct. Those are in the works and should be distributed to the town shortly.
I'll now open it up to my board. Does anybody have any questions, concerns?
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
one question and one comment, if I may. So I have no concerns with what we're trying to do here. I think I'm supportive of this. The only question I have is, this, I believe, anyways, this is the first biotech company moving into Azure space in Burlington. Is that true? So I just, as we move forward and happily move forward, I think this is a great mix and fit for the community. I would just, be cautious that we have all our ducks in a row and have a good understanding and that we have the proper plans from Azure, particularly as that second bio technology company potentially is right behind on the heels of this. So just a comment on that. The question I have is when is the planned open date for this move or starting the manufacturing?
July 1st.
It's July 1st.
July 1st.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
I just have a quick question. I was just wondering, how is that training documented to ensure that all the employees actually go through to get their badge and take that training? Is that part of the plans that's submitted to the town?
So I'm not sure that those would be part of the plan documents. We do keep thorough training records on site for everyone who comes in. And again, until you've successfully completed your training, you will not receive a badge. So you're not allowed to access any of the areas within the facility.
And and Azure manages that?
Yes, Azure manages that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have no questions. But one comment, as you know, you only need to come before us once unless there are major changes. We like to see who is coming to town and how we can support them as they support the community and are very careful within our community. So again, thank you so much for coming. If there are no more comments or discussion, I ask for a motion to approve the biological safety permit, 60 Blanchard Road, Translate Bio, with the proposed conditions that will have to be met.
So moved.
I have a motion by Dr. Wayne Saltzman, second by
I'll second it.
Andrea Sheehan. Any other discussion? If not, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor? David McSweeney.
Aye.
Wayne Saltzman.
Aye.
Andrea Sheehan.
Aye.
And I vote aye, 4-0-0. Thank you so much, Dr. He. Thank you for bringing your team. We thank you for coming to Burlington. I think you'll be very successful here, and I'm sure you'll like it here. Thank you so much, and good night. We wish you well.
Yeah.
One other thing I should have mentioned, Wei is a resident of Burlington. We should have led with that, I think. But
I was going to mention that I live in Lexington Street, so I love everything Burlington offer. I'm very impressed about the oversized structure from the Board of Health. I used to
How long have you been here?
Almost 10 years.
10 years. Wonderful.
See, if you guys had led with that, we wouldn't have had to do the presentation at all.
Dr. He, thank you so much. Good night, everybody. Good night.
And thank you, Christine. Christine Mathis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Well, we're about half done now. Remote meeting participation and return to in-person meetings. Hooray. Susan, you're gonna present this. I know you and I discussed it quite a bit.
Yes, so included in your packet is the remote participation policy that was passed by the Board of Selectmen. And this policy allows for boards to have a portion of their meeting remotely and outlines how they would do that. So the reason why I brought it tonight is so that the board could vote on doing this if they so choose, because the end of the emergency, as you know, is June 15th. And so far as of now, meetings will have to go back they'll no longer be able to be done remotely. However, the governor is introducing legislation to extend that to September 1st. So I think what we need to do now is decide on whether or not you want to vote on this policy. We're hearing a lot of talk about, what meetings are going to look like in the future, because people have gotten used to having this remote type of portion for meetings. And this will allow the board to do that, whether it's for board members or if it's for participants that may be out of state or can't make it to the meetings.
Does everybody clearly understand? We'll be sitting in the room as we usually do. There will be a large screen, and proponents as well as other people can come before us remotely. In addition, according to the state, that if you are out of town or if you are sick or God forbid you have an emergency, you can also, with the approval of the chairman, whoever that will be be able to also attend and vote remotely. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
So this is not new. This is think this is almost 2 years old. So I guess it's already well established part of Burlington regulations. So I guess what I don't understand is why, if it's already in place, why do we need to adopt it?
You don't have to adopt it, but each board needs to vote on it. So
Okay.
utilize it. So it was
okay.
created by the selectmen, and to utilize it, your board needs to approve it and vote on it.
Got it.
With all that being said, too, the reason why the governor is having the extension, or has requested to, or filed the legislation for the extension until September 1st, is to have time to look at the open meeting law and what meetings should look like in the future, because there's been a lot of talk about having remote type meetings. So there may be some other changes. So if that legislation goes through and it gets extended to September 1st, then perhaps there may be changes to the open meeting law as well. But just in the event that that legislation doesn't pass and we have to go back to our meetings as we did in the end of June, you can have this remote portion of it.
I have also spoken to Ken Gordon about this, and I've also spoken to Mr. Sagarino, our town administrator. He hopes, and he pretty much assures us, because they're working on it now, that we will have the technology to do that within the meeting room at second floor of Town Hall. Right now, we don't have all of the technology in place, but they're working on it as we speak.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm in favor of the board adopting this policy, and I will make a motion that the board also adopt the remote participation policy for the town of Burlington, adopted itself in August of 2019.
So I'll second that motion, but I'll wait for the discussion.
I have a motion, a second, so let's get into discussion. Okay, Mr. McSweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I do support it, and I just want to make sure, very much so, particularly as I know I'm going to begin traveling for work, and it makes it easier for me if I can dial in from my hotel room to the meetings. I just want to make sure it's clear that and I think, if I can remember correctly, and don't quote me on this, I think we need to go back and read the rules around that that policy that was that Dr. Saltzman mentioned, that was voted in 2 years ago. I believe that you can't. There's certain provisions, right? You can't get a quorum from that remote person, right? The quorum already has to exist in person, and then that person can be approved. The next person can be approved to go remote, and so forth. I think there's a couple other criteria. So I just want to make sure it's clear that voting for this, which I still support, doesn't mean that we all can still be remote, that we have to have a quorum present in the meeting room, and then there's the ability for folks to dial in remotely to vote.
And who knows? There may be another pandemic sometime, and so we may have to go. I can't wait to go back live. I think that I enjoy being live, but I understand the technology is growing and growing and growing, and I support this.
Yeah, so Mr. McSweeney is absolutely right. There are minimum requirements. So members of the town board who participate remotely and all persons present at the meeting location must be clearly audible. That's an obvious. And then the quorum of the town board, including the chair or the person authorized to chair the meeting, must be physically present at the meeting location. So which means that the chair, whoever that is, and at least two other people need to be present in order for this to apply. And members who participate remotely may vote and shall not be deemed absent. So those are the minimum requirements.
Thank you.
So I have a motion, and I have any other discussion from anybody? Sarah, I think you're still going to have to do some of the hosting work. I think you're not going to lose your job. Your technology job that you're doing so beautifully, you may have to continue to do this.
Good save, Mr. Chair. Good save.
Well, my gosh, look, I have said over and over again, Sarah Quartermash has been a godsend to this board and to this professional group with all she's done to make these meetings happen. And Christine is giving me the thumbs up, and I call you every single day after the meeting, and what do? I thank you for all that you do. Every single meeting I call her.
The question is, what does she say about you, Mr. Chairman?
Numerous calls, right, Susan?
It's amazing how she's remaining on mute.
Yeah, so I guess, I guess, and I also got to say, Dawn Cathcart, thank you for everything you do too. So with that, I'll put it to a motion, a vote. All in favor, David McSweeney,
Aye.
Dr. Wayne Salzman,
Aye.
Ms. Andrea Sheehan,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So that's 4-0-0. We have we have, before we go into staff reports, we have Jen Dodge on. Jen, is there something that you're on the call for? She may be BCAT.
She's BCAT.
She's running BCAT.
Okay,
Yeah.
I spoke to her today. Thank you. Environmental staff reports, environmental engineers. Christine, you have been very busy today.
Yeah, just a little. I'll just ask if anybody has any questions on my report.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Christine, it's just a follow-up of, I saw the Fox Hill sump pump on there in the investigations. Is there any follow-up to that particularly? I think there was that one weird circumstance.
We had a repeat offense out there for which I issued an order letter and a ticket.
The same
And,
person?
Yep.
Holy.
And then, is that the one you're referring to, Mr. McSweeney?
Yeah, and then the other one that had a weird circumstance, the way that it was discharging.
So that issue, they just repaved their driveway and extended the pavement to the fence line and didn't realize that the drainage was going into a gravel area that they paved over. So to prevent it in the future, they're going to put a T on the pump that's in the backyard and have a hose come around to the front yard where it's not paved.
Great, thank you. And one further question, I'm sorry.
Yep.
First of all, I don't even know what this is, but the blow dry bar. Can you tell me, there's a lot going on there? Can you tell me what's going on, and what is the blow dry bar? I've never even heard of it before.
So it's in the new building where Sears Tire and Battery used to be, and it's a hair cutting and styling place.
Gotcha.
And so I did have a lengthy conversation with the owner, and was comfortable with her response as to their COVID protocols.
Okay. It just seemed like there was a lot, even some employees were complaining, it seemed like, so just want to make sure everything is okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question.
Please.
So we're all aware that the performing arts through the school systems have been devastated over the past year. And of course, we all feel for the kids. And Mr. Middleton Cox is very much at the center of all those programs as a director. So I saw, Christine, that Mr. Middleton Cox had come to you with something about alternative venues, and I can only assume that it's to begin to reopen or rethink again, extending performing arts for the kids.
So yeah, some of it's already taken place. They had a couple of outdoor concerts and an outdoor musical with a few performances. I think most of them the events have already occurred. They did a very nice job of submitting COVID compliant protocols for us to look at and comment on. And Mr. Middleton Cox was extremely responsive to our input.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Kudos to Mr. Middleton Cox and his team. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. Household Hazardous Waste Day, September. Do we have a date?
18th.
18th, good. And the same vendor?
So all the same vendors, yes.
They were outstanding.
Yes, I agree.
So was the team who directed traffic.
Yes, they were.
All right. Is there any other comments, any other questions for Christine Mathis?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the environmental engineer report.
Motion by Dr. Salzman, second by Mr. McSweeney. All in favor? David McSweeney,
Aye.
Wayne Salzman,
Aye.
Andrea Sheehan,
Aye.
and I vote aye, 4-0. Thank you so much. Now, Director of Public Health is made up of 4 reports: the supervisory nurse, the associate health director, the health agent, and then the director of public health. I'd like to go through them in that order, and then we can vote all of them under the director of public health. Would that be okay, Susan, for you? Supervisory nurse, are there any questions to be asked through Susan? Are you? Susan, I just have one. Our AEDs, or maybe you could look at it, getting kind of old. I was on that team about 10 years ago that bought the AEDs for the community. They came out of private money. Do we have to replace any of those soon?
Well, we constantly replace the pads and the and that's what Chris does. She goes along and checks to make sure the pads are expired. She turns it on, make sure it's still working okay, and she does that on a monthly basis. So we haven't had any issues with any of them not working or not powering on or anything like that. We make sure the pads and the batteries are up to date, not expired. We haven't had any problems with them. But if we do, then we would look into, replacing them.
Okay.
I'm not aware, Mr. Chair, that though I was on that team as well. I'm not aware that they expire, that the machine itself has an expiration date.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think you turn it on and it says place pads. I think you're probably in good shape.
Yeah, all I know is if I go down, I want it to work once or twice. So that's why I ask. We hopefully will never have to use them. Hopefully never. But I just want to make sure that they're in working order because they are getting old. Okay. Any other questions for the supervisory nurse? Okay. If not, let's go to the associate director, health director, associate health inspector. Okay. If not, we'll go to the health agent. I think the most interesting with the health age, a lot of new restaurants coming to town, a lot of new things coming to town. We're getting out of this mess. And now the director of public health. Do we have any questions? Well, Susan, would you like to summarize anything or bring anything to our attention?
Sure. So, as you all know, the state of emergency ends June 15th. All of the COVID standards are lifted on May 29th, and the new mask order or requirements are on May 29th as well. So we've gotten a lot of questions in the past week about that. Basically, I mean, some people are just like, wow, you mean I don't have to do anything now because we're so used to doing what we've been doing for a year, but everything will be lifted and no more COVID standards. Our numbers right now are really low, so that's great. We have a handful of, less than a handful, I think, of students that are on quarantine. And we haven't, I think our last case was maybe a week or so ago. So that's good. There are requirements for DESE, certain requirements that they have that are separate from the COVID standards. So the schools need to adhere to those. When you asked the question about the theater performances, so because that occurred outside of school, they had to follow the theater COVID standards. But as of after May 29th, they'll no longer have to do that. So there'll be no requirements on that. DESE, I have been talking a lot to the schools about their upcoming events. This was before we knew that everything was going to be lifted on May 29th. So right now or after May 29th, anything that occurs after that, if there's a DESE standard for it, they'll need to follow that. If there isn't, then there are no requirements. I believe DESE is going to be coming out with new guidelines on graduation this Friday. But I don't think there's going to be any limits on how many people can be there. So a lot of work going back in the schools, just trying to provide guidance to them. And as I let them know, nothing, Board of Health does not approve or disapprove of their plans. We're just trying to help them out with them and guide them in the best way. And then I also wanted to add, I was looking at the vaccination numbers, and as of May 20th, we have some data for the town of Burlington. We're pretty much aligned with the state in most areas. So for the we're above for the 12 to 19-year-olds. So 31% of Burlington 12 to 19-year-olds have been vaccinated, as opposed to 6% of the state. The 20 to 29, 50% in Burlington, 39% for the state. The 30 to 49, 55% in Burlington, 52% in the state. 50 to 64, 67 in Burlington, 65% for the state. 65 to 74, 81% in Burlington, 80% for the state. 75 plus, 76% in Burlington, 79% in the state. So that's the one area where we're not doing as good in the state, which is the 75 plus. So on average, 50% of our residents have been vaccinated. That's about what it's showing for the state, which is 47%. So we can do better at vaccination. Hopefully these numbers will increase over the summer. So with that, I don't know if you have any questions.
Yeah, Susan, you have one other issue to present, the water in town that's become such an issue over the past 12 hours.
Sure, yeah, so the PFAS testing. And we've talked about PFAS in the past. PFAS, PFOAs, it's emerging contaminant. And the Department of Environmental Protection has recently set a standard for it at 20 parts per trillion. And the EPA standard for PFAS, PFOA is 70 parts per trillion. So DEP has required testing of all cities and towns that have their own water supply for PFAS compounds, and Burlington came out at 40 parts per trillion, approximately, at both Vine Brook and Mill Pond reservoirs. So that means we are above the DEP standard that was set, but below the EPA standard. So we have been getting calls from residents who are concerned. Mainly, the people that this could affect is nursing and pregnant women and those who are immunocompromised. So I've gotten some calls from nursing women, and our advice to them is do not drink the water what they should be doing is getting bottled water, but they want to check the DEP website because they have a list of bottled water that has been tested for PFAS and PFOA, and make sure that the water that they're purchasing is does not contain any PFAS, PFOA in it. We do not recommend that people get any kind of filtration system in their homes because most of those systems are set to the EPA standard, which is the 70 parts per trillion. So it's basically not going to do anything because we're below that standard.
So just a couple things that Susan said that I just want to reiterate. We don't make the water in Burlington. We don't test the water in Burlington, we being the Board of Health. It is made by the Department of Public Works under the Selectmen. It is tested under the Department of Public Works under the Selectmen. And it is, we could say, approved or whatever. It is by the Department of Public Works and the Selectmen. So if anybody asks us, well, they certify the water. We do not. So since we don't certify the water, we don't make the water, we don't test the water, but we are responsible for the health in the town of Burlington. We have yet to get a formal and full report from the Department of Public Works in Burlington. I know that in speaking with Christine today, after I got bombarded with phone calls, Christine helped me out quite a bit. Thank you very much, Christine. And so did Susan, to understand that, we're talking about something that we never talked about before. PPT, parts per trillion. When I first got on the Board of Health, it was parts per million. And about 20 years later, it's parts per billion. Now we're under parts per trillion. So we're talking about extremely, extremely minute amounts of these materials, which are contaminating water all over the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They at least have 50 cities and towns that have some of the same problem now. So people can always call Susan. She is fully up on this. She's our Director of Public Health. I know Dr. Saltzman and others of you are well aware of how to explain this, but understand that it's even in some bottled waters, from what I understand. When we talk about bottled water, many bottled waters have some very interesting names, but basically they're purified municipal water that the company pumped into a bottle. So as Susan said, if people are pregnant or if they are nursing, they really should check the source and of where this water comes from and how it has been treated. It's a bad situation.
Mr. Chairman?
We'll be able to remediate it. It's with charcoal filters, and looks like that'll be in place in a couple of years here in Burlington. It's in our reservoir. God knows how it got there. Just
there's one thing I want to add too, which is about the mitigation measures. So the town is required to do mitigation measures, which they're working on. A letter is going to be sent out to all town residents, and basically those mitigation measures will be a carbon system on the Mill Pond treatment plant, which is going to take some time. It may take a couple years. And then also, right now, they have connected to Lexington. With Lexington has the MWRA water, so we are getting water from the Lexington line. So I have spoken to John Sanchez and Russ Mackey, the water treatment plant operator, about this. One of the things that people should understand is that we can't tell who is getting what water from Lexington. So although the water is coming in from there, we don't know exactly which households are getting that water. So everyone, if you're nursing, pregnant, immunocompromised, you should, get the bottled water because it's unclear whether or not your water will be coming from Lexington or not. And also too, they, like I said, the letter will be going out, and I think that's about it. Go ahead,
So
Christine.
you can always refer people to Susan or Christine.
Yeah, and I just
Christine,
wanted to,
yeah,
I just wanted to let the board know that the links to the DEP information on PFAS and bottled water testing results are now on on the Board of Health website as well. Thank you, Sarah, for putting those up, making those links active today.
Sarah, thank you as always. You make it happen. So it's a lot going on with the water. Go back to Susan's report. Now, does anybody have any, after we drop that bomb, have questions for Susan?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
So one question, or I guess a couple of questions on the water piece, and totally understand, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for kind of making that public service announcement that the Board of Health's not responsible for the water quality in the town. But we do, the residents do look to us for public safety. So I'm just curious, because these things I know have happened in the past. They come up every 5 years or 10 years. And I'm just concerned only because I know I heard about it outside of Board of Health. Like, how is that working relationship with either the selectmen or the DPW, and understanding the communication and the link between the operation of the water and then the public safety, and is there an opportunity to tighten that relationship, maybe either with a broader subcommittee or a task force that has regular meetings? And I don't, maybe you do, Susan, already, but just regular meetings to ensure that although they own the operation of the water and the testing of the water, certainly there's a public health component to it. And how do we work? And I'm just taking a leap here, right? I'm not saying that we don't, but how do we work closer or better together to ensure the public safety? And I guess before you answer that question, I guess the second question I would have is, do you know anything about the origin of this? Why all of a sudden do we have an increase in our water supply? And I know it's a common contaminant, but why all of a sudden do we have an increase, or do we understand the origin, or why, what happened to make that occur?
Yeah, so on your first question, I can speak to to myself in working with John Sanchez, the superintendent of public works, and we have a very good relationship. He calls me often, I call him. He let me know that they were going to be sending out this notice, so he told me that they were going to be putting it in the newspaper. It wasn't required to send out this letter yet. They had time to do it, so they're working on the letter right now, but they wanted to get the information out to people as soon as possible. That's why they put out the press release. So prior to putting out the press release, he let me know they're working on a letter now to send out to all the residents. Now, it's the selectmen decide whether, I know if you look at other towns, some towns are offering bottled water, some towns are doing different things. It's the selectmen's decision whether or not to do that. So the selectmen will be working on that part of it. And I don't know if that will be part of the letter or not, but that information will be coming out from the selectmen's office. I guess I can't speak to the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen with regards to that information going back and forth between the boards, but I can say that, on a staff level, we have a very good relationship with the Department of Public Works.
Yeah, and John and the rest of the team over there have always been great. We've worked with them in several initiatives within the town in the past, and I can't speak more highly about their competency and their collaboration. I think they're fantastic. I just think there's an opportunity. There's a gap, I think, and not in day-to-day operations, but just an overall strategy in collaboration as it pertains to the water in town. And again, I get they run the operation. I'm not necessarily suggesting anything changing there, other than that there's an opportunity to, because there is such a public health component to our town water supply, that we work tighter. And maybe it's a letter, and I don't know what the answer is, but I'm talking off the cuff here. Maybe it's a letter to the Board of Selectmen that we form a subcommittee or a task force for ongoing, you know, collaboration around the water quality in the town.
Sounds like a good idea. How does the board feel about that?
Well, Mr. Chair, doesn't, I believe that the selectmen have, are segmented in also extending as liaisons to different aspects of town governance. So I don't know which selectman is associated with our board, but I think that that person should be empowered to be the liaison and update us, or update, at least update you or the vice chair with regard to what is happening in the town. So that would fall under our purview or would make our phones ring.
Yes, I think that that's a good point, and I believe it's Bob Hogan who is the liaison for us on the selectmen.
I'll reach out to Bob. I'll reach out to Bob, see what he wants to do. Great point, Dr. Salzman. Thank you, Wayne. Really great. We are very lucky that we have Mr. Sanchez. He has been working on mixing water and doing whatever he's needed to have to do for many years now. In the last 40 years, we've had only two chiefs of Department of Public Works, and we've been very lucky. And John Sanchez, I'm always amazed as how smart he is and how open he is, and he always does the right thing. So if John Sanchez is watching, I'm saying nice things about you, and I think we all agree he's done a lot of good things for this community. But we got to get our hands around this. So thank you. Susan, anybody else have the questions before I got a load for Susan here?
I think David had the second part of his questions, which regards to the PFAS. Why is this an issue now? Why are we seeing it now? That type of thing. So PFAS has been around for a long time and is used in a lot of different materials. And it's only now that we are beginning to regulate it and to test for it. So that's the reason why it's being it's coming up now, because it's one of those emerging contaminants, just like 1,4-dioxane was one of the emerging contaminants. And 10 years ago, when I first started, and in the environmental engineer's position, and was looking at the water reports that Rue was getting, you know, John Sanchez and I started working together, looking at the 1,4-dioxane issue and the testing that the town did and what could be done about that. And it was recognized back then that 1,4-dioxane could be an emerging contaminant. And this, again, this PFAS, this is another one of those emerging contaminants that we just never tested for before. And there's going to be more of those in the future. So I think the town, you know, the decision for the town to get onto the MWRA water, that was something that I thought was, that I supported, mainly because of the emerging contaminants that come up and the requirement to retrofit the water plants, you know, to get those contaminants out of the water. And sometimes that can be very difficult. Luckily for PFAS, it's a little bit easier because you need to retrofit for the carbon. So it'll be easier for that at the Mill Pond treatment plant. It just needs to, it has to be installed.
Just realize we're at a point where we're testing for materials with a 1 and 12 zeros after it. So we are talking about, as I said, we could never have tested for this 20 years ago. A 1 with 12 zeros, that's how much. So very, very, very small amounts. And the ability to do that with probably mass spec is with us now. We're looking 20 parts per trillion. Unbelievable. The other question, anything else for Susan before?
I'm all set. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Susan.
Have you heard from the selectmen who did call me, did speak to me, and I know spoke to you about the July 4th parade where they want us to be on a float? Is that correct?
I haven't heard from them. The last that I had heard, they were doing a rolling rally type of thing rather than a parade, because at the time it was unclear whether or not parades were going to be allowed. Now it's looking like parades, well, parades will be allowed. And it's just a matter of whether or not they're going to do the parade or they're going to do the rolling rally thing. But I haven't heard from them on that. I believe Mike Runyon is heading that up. So I'm not sure what's going on with it.
Yeah, Mike Runyon said to me he wants the Board of Health at that parade front and center for what we did for the town. So I don't know. I hope we all or at least some people on the board can go sit on the float during the parade, because I don't want to blow our own horn, but we've had a heck of a 15 months, and he wants to show us off. Anything else? The only other thing I have is WinView 2. Discussion I had with you. When Michael Murray will be addressing this board and updating us on the WinView 2 project that you talked to us about 3 months ago. At the next meeting, he would like to be on our agenda. So I'm asking you to please put
Okay.
that on based on our discussion today.
Yeah.
And with that, do I have a motion to approve the Director of Public Health, which includes the supervisory nurse, the health agent, the associate health inspector, and the Director of Public Health board?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second motion by Mr. Dr. Saltzman, second by David McSweeney. All in favor? David McSweeney,
Aye.
Wayne Saltzman,
Aye.
Andrea Sheehan, and I vote aye. That's 4-0. I'm exhausted. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Wayne Saltzman, second by
Second.
Andrea Sheehan. All in favor? David McSweeney,
Aye.
Dr. Wayne Saltzman,
Aye.
Andrea Sheehan,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion passes 4-0-0. It's been almost 2.5 hours. Thank you for putting up with me, putting up with a long agenda, putting up with everything we had to do tonight. Good meeting. Have a wonderful long weekend. Memorial Day. Think of those who protected this country, who are protecting this country, those of you who gave their lives for this country. And I wish you all a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.